Hello and welcome. We are celebrating the Bard's Tale ARPG anniversary with a special developer commentary video. I'm Micah Whipple, Communications Director here at inXile, and with me is Matt Amy,
Yes, I'm here.
Matt Finley, NOLA Chief, and Creative Director on the original game.
Hello.
And last but not least, we have Max Kaufman, who was Art Director on Bard's Tale.
How's it going?
Bard's Tale ARPG release in 2004, and that was inXile's first game. So what was it? What was it like back then?
Yeah, it was. We were very small company, filled with hope, excited to work on exactly the products that we wanted to do, and we were trying to punch above our weight. We knew we were developing a very small team. We were trying to compete with products with budgets 2 and 3 times what we had, and we decided the way to attack the genre was with song and dance.
Good old song and dance.
I didn't know about that.
You didn't know about the song or dance?
Before I started, I didn't know about the song or the dance.
Would you have not joined the company if you had known?
No, I think I would have done it, but it definitely it was a fun, happy surprise, I guess.
Yeah, it happened by accident. We didn't set out initially to make something as irreverent as this. We were just we knew we wanted to use the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance technology. We had the Bard's Tale name, and we're making a more straight game. But as we did all of our research, we were just so blown away by how bad a lot of the products were with the cliches and going into the cellar and killing the rats, and it was just all the products in the genre were so similar that we just felt like we wanted to do something a little bit different. And so we came up with a way where we could make fun of the tropes, but then go ahead and still use them. The game had a lot of self-awareness, and our character is not your normal RPG character. He's kind of an ass. Can I say ass?
You can say ass.
Say whatever you want.
I think it was a very open development cycle. We were all, kind of creating stuff and then laughing about things and then talking about it. And a lot of that stuff I feel like got in. There was, we were having a good time. I think it was the beginning of inXile's cause and effect philosophy, this game, and as we did things and what happened to you, and that we would hold things throughout the game that you did.
Yeah, I think.
Now, where does this live in? Where does this live in the Bard's Tale world? We talked about this a little bit before. This was not a direct ancestor or descendant.
Yeah, we owned the name The Bard's Tale, but we didn't actually own all of the content from Bard's Tale 1, 2, and 3. So when we wanted to design the world that this game was going to be set in, we went back to the source material that all of the Bard's Tale stuff came out of. A lot of the mythology from this game was stuff that was based off of Scottish folklore.
I was very proud here. I recorded for very long just because I kept blocking appropriately at the right moments here.
Yeah,
Matt,
that's pretty good.
I didn't know that the bugbear was part of Scottish mythology.
Of course it is.
He is now.
Except they call him the bugger bear. The inspiration for the base combat is actually the original Prince of Persia games, with just a simple parry and a simple attack. And then we layered on top of that different weapon systems of you can do two-handed fighting or sword and shield or the mace, with each one has upgrades and different weapon paths and different special attacks. But at its core, it is just a very simple block and attack. So it's easy to kind of get in, but because of all the complexities of the attacks that you unlock as you're playing it, it definitely grows in complexity.
Kind of going back to talking about the ass, the bard, voiced by Carrie Elvis. That's pretty impressive. I mean, in addition to Tony J, who I'd also like to talk about, but you talk about Carrie and getting him in the recording studio and what that was like.
Yeah, Carrie was he was the only one that we ever imagined playing the Bard. Of course, we assumed we could never get him, but we wrote all of the dialogue for the game assuming it was going to be him. And the same with Tony J as well. They were both idols of mine, and I thought they would have been perfect for this. Initially, we recorded all of the dialogue with basically the dev team as placeholder. And then one by one, as we went into the real recording booth towards the end, we replaced them all. Kerry was just a pro. He came in and did the entire script across 4 days and just nailed it. Is really the nicest guy that I've ever been in a recording booth with. He was just a pleasure to work with. And Tony J is just one of the best of the best. I don't know that Tony ever did a second take on a single line. He pretty much had a Sinatra philosophy of if the tape was rolling, we probably have it and we'll keep moving. As a young developer I've been doing games for 12, 13 years by that point, but I'd never been in the booth with such seasoned pros before. It was a learning experience for everybody.
I think it was a major lost opportunity on the development team audio, which is excellent, especially mine.
Yeah, what did you voice, Max?
I did the Bugbear.
Yeah, we when the game first went into QA, we had an outside group that was testing the game for the first time, and I think the Carrie Elwes stuff was all in there and the Tony J, but a lot of the smaller parts were still the developer voices, and there was actually bugs reported in the database that the voice actors were horrible.
Who was the barrel maker? Was that Chris? I think it was one of our Chris's at the time.
Yeah.
So the same holds true for the beer song. You guys were all recording that right there in the studio? I mean, right there.
Yeah, so the beer song actually predates most of the design for the game.
A long time ago, way back in history, when all there was to drink was nothing but dropsy, along came a man by the name of Charlie Moss.
That was something that was very important to Brian Fargo when we sat down and kind of had our first conversations about what the game was going to be. He really had this vision for us doing original music with lyrics and having characters in the game singing and performing the songs. And we were working with Tommy Tallarico, who basically got into the studio with some of his buddies and recorded that beer song in one night. It was one of the first things that went in. That bar in Houghton where the game begins is sort of our test level. It sort of does one of all the things that the game does. You have an enemy, you have a conversation, you have a song moment. So it was one of our debugging rules that you had to make sure that you could play through that level at the end of the day before you left, so that we knew things weren't horribly broken for everyone that was staying late and working. So it was nice to have that great song, but I think everyone on the dev team has heard that song at least 1,000 times.
And if you mess something up in the development, you would get the disc of shame. Remember that, Matt?
The disc of shame.
We had a CD with like a string around it or something, or a rope, and we'd put it around like somebody's chair or their desk, which was like the disc of shame. Because when we finished development, we would then burn a disc, then we would test the disc. But sometimes the disc would just be broken right as soon as you loaded it in.
The turnaround times in development back then were a lot slower than they are today.
And we didn't have source control, right?
There was no source control.
Yeah, it was no source control.
For the lay person such as myself, what is source control?
So for our modern developments, we are using fancy software systems that keep track of everyone's code, and people check things into the system and they become a part of the builds. Back then, you pretty much had one guy in the building who had the version of the game running on his machine, and everyone else who was working had to literally copy and paste things over to that machine before we could do builds of the game. It was a primitive system.
Yeah, and then you couldn't, like nowadays, you could trace back to what happened. But if somebody did something, you'd have to like, or in those days, you'd have to walk around the office and be like, okay, who did this? What happened?
Oh, I think another chosen one's about to get it.
I know that the Tro are going to be singing here in a second. And stepping back to the Beer 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 song,
Yeah.
who was responsible for writing all of these songs? Was it Tommy?
So the Beer 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 song is actually a classic song that we just sort of customized the lyrics to be about our game, changed the name of the bars and everything he's referencing. The rest of the music is actually original music. It was written a combination of Tommy and our in-house writers. Dennis Miller was the guy doing a lot of it. The Trow and the recurring Trow characters that keep showing up and singing about what a horrible person you are, the bad luck to be you. That was sort of our take on a Greek chorus, and it's a classic concept across literature. I think most people probably would only know the Oompa Loompas as an example of a Greek chorus in Willy Wonka. So yeah, these little guys come up and sing a custom song about whatever horrible mistake you've just recently made. Mostly because it made us laugh to kind of force the player to do bad things and then make fun of them for doing it.
Today I learned that the Oompa Loompa song is based on a Greek chorus.
We're
Like, that's
very
gonna
deep
stick.
in our narrative. We're very deep.
Now you got me thinking of Oompa Loompas and little togas.
Again, all the synchronized dancing is more a function of our limited amounts of animation than any plan to actually have synchronized dancing.
Well, it worked out. The Trow have their act together.
Been practicing.
Good dancers, for sure.
Yeah, there's actually 4 or 5 versions of this song that they show up and sing at you at various points in the game.
You know, not to get too deep and philosophical here, but you know, time flies, and this game both at once feels like, you know, it's been a while since this game came out, but at the same time, there's not a lot of other games like this that, you know, break the fourth wall and play on the tropes of, you know, the action role playing adventure. I'd like to see another one.
So would I. I think part of it was this was at the time, you know, the late 90s going into the early 2000s. This was kind of the action RPG genre was sort of really flexing. But I feel like we might have ruined the cliche busting for everybody because we literally destroyed all of the cliches at one point throughout the course of this game. It would be really hard for someone to step in and do that and not look derivative of us.
Sure.
Oh, the Finn folk.
Guess we got to find new tropes, right? New tropes to go after.
I haven't seen too many games kill the rats in the cellar since we mocked it so brutally.
Still a lot of barrels though.
Still a lot of barrels. That was the fun thing about the development is we might have been making fun of the tropes, but we were doing them. Like we would make fun of a FedEx mission as we're sending you on a FedEx mission. And we make fun of everything and then do it. And somehow it felt liberating that it was okay to do this thing that most gamers think is horrible because we're making fun of it while we're doing it. It was sort of a get out of jail free card. I'm surprised in watching this at how much cutscene material there was. We were kind of priding ourselves on not being too focused on the story. I mean, at its core, the story is rescue the princess from the tower because we wanted the most cliched story we could have in our cliche busting game. But there seems to be an awful lot of cutscenes developing the backstory along the way.
And that was such a small team too. Just the fact that we got to all of them and did it.
How big was the team?
I mean, maybe 20 people. I think the credits list looks a lot longer than that because people came on and went off, but it was the essence of a small team.
Yeah, I think true development was under 20. It was like 16 to 18 of us that were really doing it. And then You know, we talked about this before, but the way it was all planned out, Matt. We should
Yeah.
probably go into that again.
Yeah, it was because of how long we started designing the game before we even really had a company. While we were, looking for employees and looking for office space, we were designing out the whole thing. By the time we were ramping up and hiring people, we pretty much had a finished script. Like we had every dialogue for the game beginning to end, every area, every map. It was all figured out. And it was interesting because when team members would roll on, we could sit them down in the conference room and take them through the entire game from beginning to end. I don't think that we've ever done that to that level of detail before. It worked really well because people they felt like they knew what game they were working on. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what game you're working on because you're working in some little small corner of it. But we were able to take people through and show them the whole big picture.
Yeah, I think that allowed us to make such a large game that when we looked at it in the beginning, it was really big. And I don't think I think we cut one area or something, but it was a huge game and we got it all done somehow, even little things that I never thought we'd get done, like the flying manta ray and stuff like that.
We had a very simple principle. Just taking character models as an example, the design might have had a list that we needed 45 different character models. We figured out how long they took each to do on average, which at that time was really only about a week. And so we're like, all right, we know we have about 50 weeks to get all of these character models done. They're taking about a week each. We want to do 45. We're fine. And then one of them took twice as long. We're still okay. A second one took twice as long. Well, the third time that happened, we're just cutting one, just finding one and taking it out because the clock wasn't going to move. We knew what the deadline was going to be. And if we only have enough time to make 43 instead of 45, then that's how many we make. And the design just sort of flowed with it. So we ended up getting to stick a lot of stuff in because it was really a solid plan.
We didn't even have a producer, remember? We would just make schedules on calendars, and then everybody would know exactly what they were doing for the month. And we were very nimble and small and excited to work on it. And
yeah, we barely even had time to build development schedules. This is before sprints were a thing. This was pretty much, we knew all the things that were supposed to be there. We knew how many people we had, and we just planned everybody out without really any production support.
There was no time to complain or get frustrated.
We're moving quickly.
Yeah,
and because we were using the Snowblind engine, we got to focus solely on making the content. We weren't worrying about the tech. We didn't try to do one thing that the engine didn't already do. There was no real tech development of any kind. It was all content.
Right. That was our philosophy early on. That in those days, people didn't really license engines as much. It was just starting. And we were like, we're just about the content. We're not going to spend time making an engine.
Yeah, after all those years at Interplay, where every single project kickoff was building tech from the ground up, and you're a year and a half to 2 years in before you can even play the game. When you're using another engine and you already know how to use it, as soon as that Bard model was done, we'd stick it in the game and attach it to the animations, and he's running around the world. We could show what the game looked like. That bar scene that the game opens with was done in its shippable state, 18 months prior to the rest of the game being done. So you could see and play and touch how the game was very, very early on.
You mentioned wanting to talk a little bit about Tony J. We just had one of those transmissions where the Bard is getting treasure from the wolves, and Tony J steps in to rap about that. Did you have any other commentary you wanted to offer about Tony?
Well, I think Tony was great. That was one of the moments where, because Tony had been doing a lot of video game work in addition to all of his famous Hollywood stuff. And he stopped us in mid-recording because he had never seen a character break the fourth wall before. And so he'd been recording all these lines, narrating the product, and then he gets to the one, and he's actually interacting with Carrie, going back and forth. And we had to stop and explain to Tony that, this is what we're doing here. You're the narrator, and you're not there, but then you are there, and He still only gave me 1 read per line, so he understood it well enough to keep moving.
One of the things that I was always proud of from the art end was that, so our terrain, I don't think people really noticed this or appreciated it, but our terrain was like one continuous terrain with painted walkways and painted areas. But normally in a game like this, you would have tiles, so it'd be repeated all over the place. And one of the things that we achieved was that the terrain, whether it's in the forest or in the snow level, it looked like an actual natural terrain.
In this scene with Banafeet, he just gave him the password to get into the jail where Kettle's being held, and the password is Fiddlesnarf. I'm pretty sure that was our Wi-Fi password the first 10 years of inXile. So if you were anywhere in Newport Beach in the early 2000s from Jack's Surfboard, you could have got onto our Wi-Fi with Fiddlesnarf.
You know somebody did that, I'm sure. Got some rafts.
Yeah, the water was one of the things that the engine did really, really well. I don't think our original design for these levels really took that into account. So when we found out the engine did water, we came up with a way to do water levels.
Yeah, but even that, the technology of that, the idea of having the bard on a raft while it was moving with these guys attacking you, it was a lot of work to get these things to work like that.
It seems like there's some weight to the raft as well. Maybe there's definitely like a submerged back end of the raft there.
Mm-hmm. It's doing a very tiny physics calculation. Yeah, but once we got to work, we put 2 different raft scenes into the game. We had to find another place to do it. We do the ice raft too on the Viking level.
I mean, it is a kind of deceptively massive game, especially for the time, and certainly the size of the team. What was the development length on the game?
Oh boy, it must have been. I mean, we always say we started inXile in the fall of 2002. This game came out 2004, so 2 years. But in that 2 years, there was no employees. I mean, Max was like the first person that I hired, and we had to expand up till there. So for having a full team, it was probably only about 14 months of everybody in the building being there working on it. We were young. We had nothing else to do.
Yeah, it was in the old days of game development.
Working on the game was the most fun thing we had going on. I mean, it would be weekend time, and I would rather work on it than do anything else just because of how much fun it was.
That's awesome.
So, we're talking about. I mean, you have the snarky and was it snarky and nice? I always forget.
Snarky and nice, yeah.
Reaction system, and some of those things, kind of like the reactivity of the RPG. Even this is a top-down action game by and large. There's a ton of reactivity. The barrel maker smashing his barrels. I think there's something with the dog companion, and if it dies, there's like an NPC that brings it back from the dead. Or there's just a ton of things like that you wouldn't expect to see in a game like this. I don't know. You want to talk a little bit about reactivity and kind of maybe how that has stuck with inXile?
Yeah, we did a lot of reactivity on a couple different levels. There's the game-changing reactivity. You can make decisions early in the game that affect the game from the beginning. Even the dog itself, you can choose to bring the dog with you or not. If you don't bring the dog with you, then all of the dog content that we've made for the entire game is closed off to you. If you bring the dog with you, even that has levels of reactivity where we can kill the dog and bring the dog back to life or not based upon your actions. Some of the reactivity was really just stuff that cracked us up. It didn't have big impacts on the way the game went. It was just getting to a different joke. And we had a commitment to, we have to be okay building content that not everyone is going to see. And that's kind of a different philosophy. And honestly, that's something that we've done at inXile ever since. I mean, I think the Wasteland universe is ripe with that, where we have to be okay making a game that's not on rails and spending a lot of time and effort making content that not everyone's going to see. And it spills all the way over into the ending here. I think the most interesting piece of reactivity we did was the story plays out. The character Finnick and Calais are both telling you their side of the story. And in their versions of the story, the other is the bad guy and they're the good guy. And you kind of are forced to make that decision at the end, which one of them you think is telling the truth and who do you side with. And that's how the game was written from the beginning. But then when we developed it, we realized that's not really true to who the Bard character is. I mean, he's been such an ass in how he's treated everyone that just felt, and all of his motivations are so selfish from the beginning of the game. We felt like we needed an ending that was more true to the character. So we wrote at the very end a third ending where the Bard basically tells both sides he's not going to help either of them. And he basically walks out avoiding the boss fight and lets the world spiral into darkness for his own amusement. It was kind of innovative at the time, but that is also a philosophy that has stuck with us at inXile, and that was the seeds of that idea, but you see it manifest stuff in the stuff we do with Wasteland all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty. It's kind of crazy that a game back then would give you the option to just opt out of the final combat.
We couldn't. We only got away with it because it's the Bard, and you've been listening to him make super selfish decisions over and over again throughout the course of the game. The game would have felt wrong if you didn't have that option of making the selfish choice. But skipping the boss fight, I don't know how many games have done that before.
That's cool. Well, I think that's about it for us. I think we've done service to the Bard's Tale in the anniversary. So I want to thank Matt Amy for joining me, as always, Matt Finley, and Max Kaufman. Anything last you guys want to say to the fans out there?
I just got to say, doing this has sparked my own interest, and I've probably finished the game more than any human on Earth, but I can't wait to go do another run through. It's probably been 15 years since I've played it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Timing is everything when you're trying to block those wolves.
That's right. It's available now on Xbox Game Pass, so it's easy to get. Go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really, just looking at it, even visually, I mean, there's a lot of areas that are not quite up to today's standards, but there's some great stuff, and just really remember how big it is once, looking at it again, and how many cool things there are throughout the story arc.
I think it looks great. So I have my original Xbox copy, proudly displayed on my shelf. I'm a big fan. Anyway, thanks guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for listening. Have a Barty day.
Stay tuned.
No, you had it until that line.
Okay, bye.
Cool.